At this stage, I'm ready to do the mix prep. Before I get to the mix, I want to make sure all my tracks have been recorded, all my edits are finished, all my vocals have been tuned. I don't want to have to focus on any of that during the mix. I just want to be able to focus on the mix because the mix is a very artistic, personal process, and prepping for that can help you maintain that creative workflow as you're mixing. What I'll be doing during the mix prep is rendering any tuning. I'll be rendering intense plugins, rendering virtual instruments, doing some color coding, routing, and perhaps even inserting some plugins that will help me in the mix process. The first thing I'll do is save a new Pro Tools session so that I can always go back to the previous edits if I need to. So go File, Save As, and we'll call this one Slow Mix Prep. Now that I have the new Pro Tools session, everything I do here won't affect the previous Pro Tools session, so I can always go back in time and get those if I need them. You'll notice I have quite a lot of inserts already on this song. I want to get rid of a lot of these plugins. I want to keep some of my effects returns, so I'm going to put some of these plugins down on this row. This is insert A, B, C, D, and E. If I hold Option for all, click on one of the plugins, and hit No Insert, it removes the entire row. Now I can put these back up. Option, no insert. Option, no insert. Notice how it didn't do anything to my master fader. That's okay. Normally I might keep some of my sends, but for the sake of the videos, I'm going to start with a fresh blank slate so I can show routing and such. Make sure all these ones are out as well. This looks good for now, and I'll go ahead and inactivate these plugins on the master fader. I might want to keep them just because I like those plugins, but I will be changing their settings eventually. So I'm going to hit Command and Control, click on them to inactivate them. I also want to reset all of my panning and volume parameters just to start from scratch. So I'll start by clicking on the far left track, scrolling over to the right, holding Shift and clicking on the last track. And if I hold Option and Shift and click on any of the faders, that's going to bring them all back to 0. Option for all, Shift for that are selected. I'll leave the panning alone for now. I don't mind keeping that. Switching back to the edit window, let's start rendering some tracks so that we can save our computer some processing power as we mix, allocating more resources to the intense plugins we'll be putting on there. So I have this lead vocal that's been tuned, so I can right click, and since I did it in Melodyne within Pro Tools, I can then click Render. And I can do this to multiple tracks at once. Let's do some of the background vocals. Highlight the very top background vocal, scroll down, shift click on the last background vocal, right click, and then hit Render. If I had any virtual instruments on this song, I would also render those. And it's quite easy. All you do is just click on the track, right click, and say Commit. When you commit, it creates a brand new audio file with all of the plugins baked in. This way we can hear the sound of those tracks without the virtual instruments, and our computer doesn't have to process them continually as we're mixing. Let's begin some of our routing now in the mix window. I can do this from the edit window, but it's quite nice to do it in the mix window. Let's take a look at these drums over here. I have a kick, I have a snare, hi-hat, overhead, room, and then a crush bus. I want to route these all to an aux track to create a subgroup. The best way to do this right now would be hold Option for all, Shift for that are selected, and then click on my outputs. Instead of going to a track that already exists, I'll go to a new track. It automatically creates a stereo aux input, and we'll call this one drums. I like to name all of my subgroups with all caps. That way, at a glance, I can tell what it is. Now you can see that the output of each track has been routed to the input of this aux track right here, which is then output to our main speakers. If I were to hit solo on these, so I'll shift all these and hit Shift S. I can hear all those in there, but notice how this track is grayed out. That's because it's solo saved. If you command click on it, you can unsolo save it. And if I hit play, we shouldn't hear anything. And that's because while these tracks are soloed, this aux track or the subgroup is not, so it's muted because solo mutes all other tracks. So by command clicking on the solo button, it'll make sure that track never gets muted when other tracks are in solo. I like subgrouping because I'm able to control the volume of all of those at once. I'm also able to process all of those all at once. I can put a compressor on my drum bus and it'll compress the drums as a whole as opposed to each individual instrument. I wouldn't mind having some color coding as well so that I can navigate quicker in Pro Tools. A fun way to do this is just highlight the tracks you'd like, double click on the color on the very left of the track, and then click the color you want. We'll make these a red. Switch to the mix window and you can see it's in red. Makes it a little easier to navigate. So I'll go ahead and do that for the rest of the tracks as well. You can also tell that I'm having to scroll up and down to be able to see everything. So let's go ahead and get rid of this section up here and maybe the comment section as well so that I can see everything in one screen. So I'll go to View. We're in the mix window. I'll go ahead and get rid of the comment section. That's nicer. Mix. And let's get rid of the instrument section up top. Now I don't have to scroll up and down to see everything. So I've gone through and I've made all of my routing changes and all of my color changes just for a little bit of organization. I'll go ahead and walk you through it. So all of my drum tracks are getting routed to this one drum bus. Then I have both of these acoustic guitar tracks getting routed to an acoustic guitar subgroup. And I have all of these breathy vocals going to this breath subgroup. Then all of my background vocals going to one subgroup for background vocals. I also have a couple tongue drum tracks, and I routed them to their own subgroup. While I've been working on this song, I've been exporting out of Pro Tools using the bounce feature. However, when I'm mixing, I'd rather be printing my audio than bouncing it directly out of Pro Tools. So let's go ahead and get that set up. Essentially, I want to make sure that all the tracks terminate to one aux track, which will then get sent to one stereo audio track where I can then print the audio of my mix. I can see that all of these tracks are routed to this drum bus. So I want to route this drum bus to my mix bus. I also want to route my tambourine. I'm holding command as I click on additional items to keep them or to stack these selections. I'll select my subgroup, this guitar, the lead vocal, the breath subgroup, background vocals subgroup, the little glockenspiel, the tongue drum subgroup, as well as my effects returns. Now that I have all of them selected, I hit Option for all and Shift for that are selected. And I'm going to go to a new track. It's a stereo aux input. We'll put that as mix, all in caps. Now that created for us this mix track right here. Now everything is essentially routed to this mix aux track right now. Now what I'll do is I'll route my mix track to a print track. It needs to be a stereo audio file. So Command-Shift-N for a new track. Command-Down will change the track type, which is audio track at first, so we can just leave it there. But Command-Right will change the track width to stereo. We'll go ahead and name this one print. Then I'll select the output of my mix to go to the print track. Of course, I'm going to solo save my print track so that if I solo any of these tracks, it will mute all the tracks that are not in solo safe, and therefore it's not going to mute my print track or even my mix track because it's in solo safe. I'm also going to put it in input mode to pass all the audio through this audio track without actually recording it. We can test that out. Let's go ahead and test it out. I'll turn down the mix because since I essentially put all of these tracks at 0, except for a couple of them, that means there's automation on this one, which we'll check out. It's going to be a lot louder. So if I hit play now, we should hear all of these tracks getting routed to the print track. And of course, the audio getting fed to this print track is dependent upon this aux track right here. This is a good way to test to make sure that you don't have any tracks going directly to our speakers. We want them all routed to the print track so they can all make it into the mix. Let's go ahead and take care of this track right here. It looks like there might be automation on there. So if I click it and hit Command equals to switch back to the edit window, If I hit minus, I'll go to the volume automation viewpoint, and then Control up will make it expand to be a little bit bigger. Click with my selector tool, highlight that automation, and delete it. That automation wasn't too drastic. It was kind of a fade in. So in some circumstances, I might keep it. But again, I want to hear this with fresh ears, and I don't know exactly why I did that previously. Perhaps I'll end up redoing it, but for now, I want to just go ahead and start with a blank slate. Now I can go back to the mix window, hit Option, and put that fader back up to 0. You'll notice I've left all the panning. I think I'm just going to keep it because I kind of like where all those are already, and that'll save me a lot of time if I leave them be. Let's go ahead and start taking care of some of our effects returns. I know that my lead vocal is going to have both the reverb and the delay. So if I scroll over to my lead vocal, I'll do a send over to the reverb. I'll hit Option to shoot that up to 0, and we'll do the same thing for our delay. Option to 0 it out. I don't know if I want them quite yet. I just want them available to me. So I'm going to go ahead and hold Command and then Control to inactivate them as I click on them. Alternately, I could have hit Command and click on them for bypass, but I don't want them to be active in any way right now. One thing I do know that I'm going to need for my guitars is a special delay for the guitars themselves. So we'll go ahead and create a new send from the guitar track. This is the electric guitar track. I'll do a new track. We'll do an aux input. We'll call this one delay guitar. And drag that over to our right-hand side where I have those effects returns. I'll go ahead and Option, click that send to bring it up to 0. So that's the amount of volume we're sending to this delay track. And then I do love using Echo Boy. Oh, accidentally moved that over. Let's put that back. I do love Echo Boy, so I'll go ahead and put Echo Boy on here. And I know it needs to be 100% wet, and I'll probably start with maybe something like 87 milliseconds or so with a very slight feedback and a little bit of high and low cut. That's a good starting point. I'll just leave that be for now. The great thing about doing this is now if I do want any sort of reverb or delay on this track right here, I can just hold Option and drag it over. It makes it quite easy that way just to have at least one set up. I'll go ahead and take these off. Another thing I like to do in the mix prep is create the in and out points of where the mix will start and end. I'll switch back over to the edit window, and I've already actually done that with this track right here, but we'll go ahead and do it again just so we can see the process of it. I'll make a new mono track. I'm going to title this one Bounce Area, just kind of like I did that one. We'll just call it the Bounce Area or Print Area. How about that? And then I select the beginning point all the way to the end point. And instead of doing Edit, Consolidate Clip, or using that quick key, instead of doing that and creating a new audio clip that's actually taking up space on my hard drive, I'll create a new clip group with Option, Command, G. Now, when I want to print my audio, I just double click on this track and it already has the beginning and the end selected within Pro Tools. So when I record, it will record from this point to this point, making it very consistent as I'm exporting different mixes. As I mentioned before, sometimes I'll put plugins on the tracks so that I can access them quickly when I'm mixing. I'll do this to a certain degree, but we'll keep it pretty simple for the sake of the video. Essentially, what I want to do right now is I want to make sure that all of my tracks have compression and EQ ready to go and accessible very quickly. Let's just do it to the background vocals to make it nice and easy. So if I click on this very first background vocal right here, oh, I'm sorry, it's over here. Here's my background breath. And then I scroll over to the very last track, the background vocals right here, and hold Shift. I've selected all of these tracks. At the very top now, on any of these inserts, if I hit Option for all, Shift for that are selected, I can go ahead and insert an EQ. That just created EQs across the board. Now we can do that with compression as well. Option, Shift. See, I made a mistake right there by accidentally creating another EQ. I don't need that. So I'll hold Option for all, Shift there to selected, do no insert. Now I've just been able to get rid of those. Instead of putting the compressor, actually, in this case now what I want to do is I want to put a compressor on each subgroup for these background vocals. So I have a breath track right here. And then if I hold Command and click on this background vocal track, it selects both at once. Now I can do them all at once. Option Shift for all that are selected, then we'll go to the compressor. So I'll go ahead and do that for a couple of these other ones, but I feel like I might just end up leaving those and working on them as I go. That way I can really definitely hear this from a fresh perspective. I'll probably keep it simple for now because if I start putting more plugins on here, I might end up using those when I might, during the mix, actually want a different plugin, and I'm not too sure what I want yet. So there's a bit of exploring that needs to happen, and I don't want to have to take plugins off just to put other ones on. So I'm just going to keep it mostly blank for now, but I definitely know I'm going to do cleanup on a lot of these background vocal tracks by getting rid of some of the unwanted frequencies in my background vocals. Before I move on, it's worth pointing out that I almost made a mistake here. Notice how we've already done all of our routing to the mix aux track, which is then output to the stereo print track. But remember, we made this guitar delay track, and look where it's routed. It's not routed to my mix track because I made it after I did all the routing. So let's go ahead and fix that. Another thing you'll notice is my click track is going straight out my speakers. It's not going to my print track. That way I never make a mistake and accidentally include the click in the print. However, I don't think I need to have the click track for the mix, so I'll go ahead and get rid of it. And if I want to keep it, perhaps I have special settings on there that I like. I can right click and just say hide and make inactive. When I hide it and make it inactive, it is now accessible still over here. For example, it's right there. And you can see it's in italics. That means it's inactive, so no audio will ever play out of it. And you can tell that it's hidden because the dot is not colored in. If I click on it, of course, it comes back and it's in italics. Therefore, again, no audio will come out of it. We'll go ahead and put it away. You always want to be careful because you can accidentally have tracks be hidden but not inactive. For example, if you look through my Pro Tools session, notice how I have no live microphones right now. However, I do actually. It's just hidden. You can't see it, and it is active. So I'll go ahead and actually make it visible right now. And there it is right there. It's the microphone I'm using right now. I just didn't want to include it in the video, so I'll go ahead and make it hidden. One thing I should definitely do for this song, since I have so many vocal tracks on it, is put an expander on each vocal track. This will help keep any unwanted audio in the noise floor out of the mix. Essentially, an expander is going to act like a gate where when audio passes through the threshold or surpasses the threshold, it will open the gate and allow the audio to play. An expander works similarly. However, when audio passes below the threshold, instead of just completely getting rid of the audio, it will essentially just turn it down to the volume that you set, essentially expanding the dynamic range of the track. Let's go ahead and do it to the lead vocal. I have it selected and I hold Option and the up arrow key to make it bigger. We can zoom in a little bit. And let's go ahead and just insert the expander on there. I actually like using the channel strip plugin that comes stock with Pro Tools for an expander. It works quite well. I'll go ahead and uncheck the compressor limiter. We don't need that. And let's just deal with the expander. I'll go ahead and get in solo so we can just hear part of this. Come waste your time and it. So we'll set the ratio. That's how much it's going to knock it down. And then the threshold is showing where the audio will begin to go down in volume when it goes below the threshold. Come waste your time and it. Oh. So you can see that it starts to go back down, but right when I'm about to go down all the way, it comes back up. And that's fine, but I don't want it to knock the volume off way too quickly in between phrases. So I'll go ahead and put a little bit of a hold on there. Let's try 5 milliseconds. Come waste your time and it all turns out fine. That's working out kind of nicely. Now I have these breaths right here. Let's pay attention to where the breaths are on the meter. Come waste your time and it. So those breaths are somewhere around over here. So if I wanted to, I could increase my threshold, perhaps increase the hold as well. And then that way the breaths will automatically get knocked down a little bit. That way I don't have to go in there and individually clip gain each one. Let's turn the ratio up a little bit so it's a little more drastic. Come waste your time and you can see that during the breath, it's hanging out in this area. Let's go ahead and increase the depth. See right there, it's only going to knock it down to this level. That's not very loud. That's quite loud. But if I increase the depth or decrease the depth to a lower volume, it'll allow the audio to dip well below the threshold, increasing the dynamic range of the track and getting rid of some of these lower volume instances such as the breath. Come waste your time and it all turns out fine. That's not too bad. Let's go ahead and increase that release a little bit so it's a little softer. The release is making it so that when it does go below the threshold, it takes a little bit longer to go down in volume. Come waste your time and after I've done that, all of those settings are very dependent upon the threshold. I can keep all the same settings, but then when I hold Option and drag it onto, say, this background vocal track, I'm going to need to go through these and make sure that the threshold is set appropriately, because I probably did these background vocals during a different day, so I'm sure that there's a little bit of a different volume there. I'm sure there's the difference in volumes. So let's go ahead and solo this one instead. And that works out pretty nicely because you can tell that it's surpassing the threshold and then it dips below during that breath, and then I minimize those breaths. So then I could go ahead and Option drag that to the next one. And I can check each individual one. This is why it's very nice to have an assistant who can do all this for you and dial those in so that you can just go ahead and focus on the mix. Now that I have an EQ on all of these background vocal tracks, I want to take out some of the low end before I get to the mix. I essentially just want to put on a high pass filter so that I can focus on other aspects of the EQ during the mix, perhaps in the mid and the high ranges. I'll just take out some of the lows because I know I don't want those in there. And I can do them pretty quickly. There's two different ways I can do it. One of them is I've routed all these background vocal tracks to this one subgroup, and I could just put an EQ on the subgroup and then cut out the lows this way. However, I also want to take care of it at the source track itself. So I'm going to show you how I do it that way. I'll go ahead and select all of these background vocal tracks. And now when I held Shift and selected a range of tracks, notice how I included this subgroup in there. I'm going to Command click it to deselect it. Now I only have just the audio tracks themselves selected. At this point, I'm going to make a new group. Command G gives me a new group. I'll call this one background. And then if you click on the Globals tab, click on Controls for Insert A. See, that's where my EQ is. It's on Insert A. And by grouping them together this way, and with this group on, I can control each parameter of the EQ on every single track at the same time. To demonstrate this, let's go ahead and open up two different plugins at the same time. I'll open up this plugin, put it over here on the left, and if I click on this red target button right here, the next EQ or the next plugin that I open, it keeps this one open so I can see both at once. And notice how my groups are not enabled. Command-Shift-G enables all my groups. Let's get rid of that all group. But I have this regular group on, so of course I can turn volumes up and down, but it will also respond to the plugins since I enabled that in the group settings. So now I've essentially cut out everything below 89 hertz on every single EQ for this entire group. We can confirm just by clicking on all these to double check. As I'm prepping this mix, I should go ahead and create some VCAs. VCAs are really nice to use during the mix. They can aid you in so many different ways. Let's go ahead and use the drums as an example. So I'll go ahead and open up the side panel so I can see my groups. I'm going to highlight all my drums. I'm not going to highlight the drum subgroup though, just the drums or the tracks themselves. I'll go ahead and make a group with Command G, call it drums, and then click OK. Now I have a drum group. Of course, I can turn it up and down this way. I can hit Shift S to solo it. But of course, that means if I want to turn these up and down or solo them, I have to be viewing them. I can't be over here doing any of that, unless of course they're already selected. But what if I want to control individual faders when my group is on? If I hold control, I can move individual faders. And if I let go of control, then it goes back to its group. While I could work that way, a VCA would just be so much more beneficial. Let's go ahead and create a VCA now. So I'll click to the right of this. So I'll click on my subgroup right there, give myself a new VCA master. We'll call this one underscore drums, all in caps. Again, I like to do that for my aux tracks or my subgroups, but I like to do it for my VCAs as well. Can't name two tracks the same name, so I put the little underscore right below it. Some people actually also like to put V for VCA drums or something like that. We'll just leave it. It doesn't really matter to me right now. Now that I've created the VCA, we'll just leave it. I don't mind either way. Now that I've created this VCA, I can attach it to the group drums. Now that I've attached it to the group, I can move all of these faders with this one fader. I'll go ahead and turn off my group now with Command-Shift-G to suspend all my groups. If I turn them up individually, it works. If I turn them up from the VCA, they all turn up or all turn down. I can also put them all in mute or all in solo or even all in record. Notice how it actually doesn't display solo, but it does mute all the other tracks. So this is very, very nice to have when I'm mixing. If I want to hear the drums and the bass and the vocals all together, just for kicks and giggles, there's little things I could do to kind of hone in on the mix. But it's really nice for also automation because I can automate this VCA to change all of these all at once, which is quite nice to have the ability to do that. And so because I created this drums VCA, I'll probably end up putting it way over here so I have access to it when I'm on this side. And then I'll probably also create another VCA. And this one will be, forgot to rename it, the Bee Gees, or the background vocals. Let's go ahead and attach that to the background vocals. So if I want to, I can hit solo on the drums and the background vocal VCA, and I'm only going to hear just background vocals and just drums. It could be a really nice workflow for when you're mixing. So we have a very basic mix setup right now. Of course, you can do anything you want. It's all according to your standards and your workflow. But I want to keep it basic because I want to do as much work during the mix as I can to allow myself a new perspective as I mix. But I feel no fear 'cause I